The elevator doors refuse to close because something inside the camera wants you to stay and watch. I know that sounds impossible, but the clip has been looping for 3 days straight on my monitor, and the doors still gape like a mouth that forgot how to swallow. I keep telling myself it's corrupted footage, just a glitch in the Cecil's aging security system. Yet every time the timestamp hits 2 minutes and 54 seconds, the numbers stutter, roll backward, then lurch forward again, as if time itself is having second thoughts. And I swear the motion light inside the cab flickers exactly twice, like a blink, before the whole frame freezes for half a heartbeat. I should look away. I have work, groceries, a life that needs living. But the screen keeps pulling me back, a soft gravity humming between the pixels. I lean closer, and the air around the monitor drops 10 degrees, my breath fogging the glass. That's when I notice the corner of the mirror. There, just behind Elisa's shoulder, a second set of doors glints into existence. Doors that were never part of the elevator's design. They stand half open, revealing a corridor lit by a greenish glow, the taste of copper pennies and chlorine. My stomach flips because I can smell it, even across the digital divide. The timestamp jumps again, this time to -00:03. Negative time. I rub my eyes, but the digits hold steady, counting down now instead of up. A low hiss threads through my headphones, not static exactly, more like breath fogging a cold window. Then comes the whisper, thin as dental floss, yet loud enough to vibrate my teeth. Stay, I need witnesses. The voice is neither male nor female. It is the sound of old water circling a drain. My cursor refuses to move. The exit button has vanished. I am pinned to the footage like an insect on corkboard. I try to remember how I even found this file. It arrived in my inbox with no subject line, no sender, just a single attachment titled Elisa_final_echo.mp4. I told myself it was a prank, maybe a viral stunt for some indie horror game. Yet the moment I clicked play, every other tab on my browser slammed shut. My phone buzzed once and died, and the lights overhead dimmed to a funeral parlor hush. You'd think I'd yank the power cord, right? Smash the screen? But I can't. My hands rest on the desk like they belong to someone else, fingers twitching in time with the elevator's fluorescent stutter. Elisa steps into frame, except she isn't quite Elisa anymore. Her outline shivers, edges smearing as though painted on rippling silk. She presses every button in a frantic circle, same as the famous clip, but the panel is different now. The buttons spell out words, WITNESS, and the floor indicator above her head reads 14 floors beneath the water. My throat closes. I have lived in Los Angeles my entire life. There is no basement that deep, not even close. Where is she going? Where has she already been? The camera lens dilates. I don't mean zoom. I mean the actual circular glass of the lens swells like an iris sensing sudden brightness. Inside that black circle I glimpse movement, slow, deliberate, as if something crawls toward me along the interior of the cable itself. The audio track develops a second layer, a heartbeat, but too slow, maybe 30 beats per minute. My own heart races to match it, then slows against my will. Tears sting my eyes, not from sadness, but from pressure, like I'm sinking in deep water. And here's the freshest terror. The view inside the elevator is no longer limited to the elevator. The mirror reflects the entire hotel corridor behind the camera, and in that reflection, I see a desk, a glowing monitor, and someone sitting at it. The figure has my haircut, my hoodie, my hunched shoulders, but the face is just a smear of static. The figure raises a hand and waves, slow and mocking. I feel the motion in my own wrist, an alien puppetry. I try to scream, but the sound loops back into the footage, becoming part of the hiss, part of the whisper. The doors still refuse to close. Elisa, or whatever wears her shape, turns toward the lens. Her mouth opens, not in panic, but in a perfect O of invitation. 14 floors beneath the water, the echo learns your name. The heartbeat doubles, triples, becomes the rush of floodwater in my ears. I feel the chair sliding backward on its wheels, yet I haven't moved. Something is pulling the room, the desk, the entire building down, through 14 layers of something far denser than concrete. My reflection in the monitor grins, teeth phosphorescent, and lifts a finger to lips that are no longer mine. The timestamp hits 00:00. The screen goes black. But the whisper doesn't stop. It grows teeth made of dripping hotel pipes, and somewhere below, doors that were never built begin to open wider. I think the elevator is coming up for me next.
The whisper didn't stop, no. It grew roots in my ears and bloomed into a sound I can only describe as applause from people who never learned to clap. The screen stayed black, but I could feel the building moving. No, sinking. Each floor was peeling away like old wallpaper, and suddenly, clear's throat. I wasn't in the present anymore. The timestamp reversed, digits spinning backward until they settled on 1927. My chair felt different, heavier, velvet instead of mesh. The air smelled of cigar smoke and gardenias, thick enough to chew. I heard music first, ragtime bleeding from a gramophone that wasn't plugged in. Then came the voices, all talking at once, layered like sediment. A woman laughed, but the sound cracked in the middle, turning into something metallic. The lobby stretched longer than physics allows, and at the far end stood the elevator, its brass doors polished to a murderous shine. They called it the ascensor back then, painted in gold leaf above the frame, though the word looked wrong, like it had been written by someone who'd only heard elevators described in nightmares. A bellhop appeared beside me, crisp uniform the color of dried blood. His cap sat too high on his head, revealing hair that moved independently, as if underwater. "First night," he said, voice echoing from somewhere behind his teeth. "They always get lost on the first night." He reached for my bag, except I wasn't carrying one, hadn't been carrying one, but suddenly, there it was, leather warm and pulsing like a heart. His fingers touched the handle and his face flickered, just for a moment, showing me what he'd look like dead. The image burned itself behind my eyes. Skin gray, mouth open in a silent scream that would never reach air. The elevator dinged, a sound like breaking teeth. Its doors yawned open, revealing nothing but darkness thick as tar. The bellhop stepped forward, but his shoes didn't touch the carpet. He floated, really, and as he passed the threshold, his uniform began to unravel, threads pulling backward like time reversing a tapestry. I wanted to call out, to warn him, but my voice came out as elevator music played backward. The doors started closing, and in that narrowing gap I saw his reflection didn't match. His reflection was already inside the elevator, already reaching for buttons that weren't there yet. The lobby shifted again. The reception desk warped, wood breathing like lungs. Behind it, the register book flipped open to a page dated December 1st, 1927. Names appeared in ink that dripped upward. Guests who'd checked in but never checked out. I saw the bellhop's name, James Cartwright, room 1414, and beside it, in fresher ink, my own. My signature looked exactly like it does today, looped letters and all, though I wasn't born yet when this page was supposedly filled. The pen beside the book lifted itself, scrawling one final name beneath mine, Elisa Lamb. The elevator doors had closed, but I could still hear the bellhop. Not his voice, his absence, the sound of a person being erased one atom at a time, leaving only the echo of shoes that never quite touched ground. The lobby's gaslights dimmed, then brightened, revealing scratches along the elevator's brass rail, fresh ones, deep enough to catch fingernails. They spelled out something in binary, though my mind translated it automatically. First death recorded successfully. The music stopped mid-song, needle lifted by invisible hands. In the silence, I heard it, that same whisper from my blackened monitor, but younger, hungrier. It came from the elevator shaft, rising up 14 floors of darkness. Something was counting down, or up, I couldn't tell. The lobby began to fade at the edges, reality peeling away like burnt film. But before everything dissolved, I caught one last glimpse of the elevator indicator. It had moved from L to 1, but the 1 flickered, showing me a 14 that shouldn't exist yet. The suitcase the bellhop had been reaching for sat alone on the carpet, leather still warm, still pulsing. Its clasp clicked open by itself, revealing not clothes, but water. Black water, 14 inches deep, reflecting a face that wasn't mine. The face smiled, teeth phosphorescent, and whispered, "Floor 2 is waiting, and it's been underwater much longer. I think
The elevator is coming back down for me. The elevator doors parted with a reluctant sigh, and I stepped out onto floor 4. Instantly, the air thickened, like breathing through wet velvet. The hallway lights buzzed at half strength, casting sickly amber pools that made every shadow look like a reaching hand. I smelled old tobacco and something sweeter, almost floral, like funeral lilies left too long in stagnant water. I took 3 steps before I realized the wallpaper was moving. Not fluttering, no breeze here, but crawling, the faded roses and paisleys shifting into sockets and teeth. Each skull yawned wider the longer I stared, as if trying to speak. My pulse drummed so loudly, I almost missed the faint scratch, 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 coming from behind the nearest door, room 408. I raised my knuckles to knock, but the door drifted open before I touched it. Inside, the room looked frozen in 1979. Harvest gold drapes, orange shag carpet, a Zenith television squatting like a stone idol. A man sat at a tiny desk, back to me, charcoal stick flying over a sketch pad. He never turned around, just kept drawing, faster and faster, paper flapping like trapped birds. The sketches were all the same. The elevator interior, walls closing in, a single figure hunched in the corner. Me. Well, a version of me anyway. Hair longer, eyes black pits, mouth sewn shut with what looked like cassette tape. I tried to speak, but the words died in my throat when I noticed the walls. Every inch was covered in those drawings, layer upon layer, charcoal lines overlapping until the paper itself seemed to breathe. The scratching stopped. The artist's hand hovered mid-stroke. Then he simply wasn't there anymore. The charcoal clattered to the desk, rolled once, and came to rest pointing at the television. The screen flickered to life, not static, but animation. Frame by frame, the elevator sketches began to move. Charcoal lines sliding across the glass like insects. I watched myself step into the car, press the buttons, wait. Then the walls closed in, crushing the figure until only a smear remained. The cycle restarted, faster each time, until the images blurred into a stuttering scream. I backed toward the door, but it had vanished. Where hinges should have been, more sketches bloomed, fresh charcoal bleeding through the wallpaper like mold. My own outline appeared among them, unfinished, hand still reaching for a knob that didn't exist. The television volume rose, a whisper at first, then a roar. Long-term guest, long-term guest, long-term guest. The words layered over themselves until they sounded like water gurgling down a drain. The room temperature plummeted. My breath fogged, mixing with the charcoal dust swirling in the air. Each particle tasted metallic, like blood from a bitten tongue. I pressed my palm to the nearest wall and felt a heartbeat, steady, patient, utterly inhuman. The sketches pulsed with it, the elevator scenes accelerating, until the drawn version of me became a frantic smear of motion, endlessly dying. Something wet touched my shoe. I looked down. The carpet was bleeding, not red, black, thick, the same water that had filled the suitcase on the lobby floor. It welled up between the orange fibers, lapping at my ankles, carrying scraps of paper that dissolved into more charcoal dust. The water reflected the television's glow, and in its surface I saw the artist again, submerged, eyes wide, still sketching beneath the surface with fingers that had no nails. The heartbeat quickened. The water reached my knees. I felt the tug of unseen currents trying to pull me down into whatever archive this place kept of vanished tenants. My reflection in the water smiled, teeth phosphorescent, and whispered, "Floor 5 has tenure, and tenure never ends." I lunged for the window, but it was only another sketch, flat charcoal lines on drywall. The water kissed my waist. Somewhere behind the walls, the elevator bell chimed, cheerful and hollow. The next floor was calling, and I could already taste the salt of deeper water on my tongue. The elevator bell chimed again, louder this time, like it was laughing at my soaked shoes. I stepped inside, water sloshing around my ankles, and pressed the button for floor 7. The doors slid shut with a whisper that sounded suspiciously like my own name. I spun around, but the elevator was empty. Just polished brass and that familiar scent of old copper pennies. The ascent felt wrong. Instead of going up, we seemed to be sinking. The numbers above the door counted backward. 6, 5, 4, until I realized they weren't floor numbers at all. They were years. 1987 glowed crimson, then 1953, then 1927. Each year pulsed like a dying heartbeat. The doors opened onto floor 7, but calling it a floor felt generous. It was more like a hallway that had forgotten how to be straight. The walls were lined with mirrors, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, each one cracked in exactly the same place, right down the middle, like someone had taken an axe to every single reflection. I stepped forward, and the mirrors began to hum. Not a pleasant hum, mind you. More like the sound your teeth make when you bite down on aluminum foil. The cracks started spreading, webbing out like frost on a winter window, until each mirror shattered into 14 perfect pieces, and in every shard, there she was, Elisa Lamb. Not just one Elisa, but 14 versions of her, each trapped in her own decade. In the smallest shard, a child of maybe 6 stood barefoot in a yellow dress, her mouth forming words I couldn't hear. Next to her, a teenage Elisa with braces and hopeful eyes, pressing her palms against the glass like she was drowning. Then came the Elisa I'd seen in the lobby videos, the one who'd vanished, her face twisted in that same silent scream. The adult Elisa in the largest shard looked directly at me, and I swear, her eyes were the exact color of hotel pool water. "She's still swimming," she seemed to say. "She never learned how to stop." I reached out to touch the glass, and my fingers went straight through. No resistance at all. It felt like dipping my hand into liquid nitrogen, that burning cold that makes you question which direction pain actually flows. The child Elisa grabbed my wrist with tiny fingers that felt like ice hooks. The teenage Elisa started banging in her shard, and the sound was like bones cracking underwater. The rhythm matched my heartbeat, which was getting slower, heavier, like the water was inside my chest now. The adult Elisa's mouth moved again, and this time I heard her voice directly in my head. Not through my ears, but like she was speaking from the space between my thoughts. "Every floor is a drowning," she said, "and every drowning is a mirror. Do you see? Do you see how long we've been falling?" The mirrors began to rotate, slowly at first, then faster. The shards became a kaleidoscope of Elisa's faces, all ages spinning together until they blurred into one continuous scream. I tried to pull my hand back, but the child Elisa's grip was iron. She smiled then, and her teeth were the same phosphorescent white as my reflection in the water downstairs. The hallway tilted, not metaphorically, actually tilted, sending me sliding toward the far end, where a single elevator waited. But this one had no buttons, no floor indicators. Just a sign that read, "Floor 8, the pressure chamber." The child Elisa let go, but her fingerprints stayed burned into my skin like frostbite brands. As the elevator doors closed, I saw all 14 shards align for one perfect moment. Every Elisa, child, teen, adult, all the in-betweens, stood in a line that stretched across decades. They raised their hands in unison, and in their palms I saw, my own reflection, multiplied 14 times, each one wearing a different expression of drowning. The elevator began its descent, but I knew better now. There was no down here, only deeper. And somewhere in the darkness below, floor 8 was waiting with its pressure chamber and its own reflections. The last thing I heard before the lights went out was the sound of 14 voices whispering in perfect harmony. "The deeper you go, the more of her you become." The elevator doors parted, but instead of the expected 9th floor, they revealed nothing but the black between floors. No buttons, no walls, just a narrow shaft of stale air and the smell of wet metal. The car had stopped between worlds, like it had forgotten which reality it belonged to. I stepped out anyway. The soles of my shoes stuck to something slick, copper, or worse. A single flashlight flickered to life in my hand, no memory of turning it on. The beams sliced through the dark and caught on braided cables overhead, thick as pythons and woven through with long strands of dark hair. Human hair, still damp, clinging to the steel like ivy. The braids moved, slow and breathing, pulsing with the heartbeat of the building itself. I reached out Don't ask me why. And the strands recoiled, curling away from my skin like they recognized me. Or remembered someone I used to be. The air was thick, almost syrupy. I had to lean forward to move, like the darkness had weight. That's when I saw them. Footprints. Bare, outlined in water, climbing the wall beside me. Up, not down. Each step left a heel mark against the concrete, toes pointed toward the ceiling like someone had walked straight up the shaft and never looked back. I followed them with my light. They went higher than the beam could reach, and somewhere above, something dripped in rhythm. Drip, drip, drip. Not water. I pressed my palm to the wall to steady myself, and the concrete was warm, not from machinery, from skin. The surface gave slightly, like flesh under pressure, and I swear I felt a pulse beneath it. A slow, deliberate thud. The building wasn't just alive, it was digesting. I pulled my hand back and my fingers came away wet, smelling of salt and something older. Ocean, rust, memory. A low hum started overhead, a mechanical growl that wasn't quite sound. The cables began to sway. The hair tightened around them, braiding faster now, weaving itself into patterns I almost recognized. A face. Not quite. The suggestion of one. Elisa's, maybe. Or mine. The mouth moved, but no words came, just the sound of lungs filling with water. I staggered back and the flashlight flickered. Once. Twice. Darkness. Then a second light, not mine, snapped on above me. A maintenance hatch, rusted, half open. The footprints ended there. I climbed, hands bleeding on the metal rungs. Each rung was colder than the last, until my palms stuck to them like tongue on ice. I didn't feel the pain. I felt the pull. Something wanted me up there, or wanted me to see what waited. Inside the hatch, the air changed. Warmer. Breathing. The walls were lined with old tools, wrenches, grease rags, a broken walkie-talkie, but they were covered in the same black hair. It grew from the handles, curled around the blades, rooted like mold. I brushed past a hammer, and it sighed. Actually sighed, like it remembered the last hand that held it. There was a panel on the far wall, still humming. A fuse box, maybe. But when I opened it, there were no wires, just water, filling the box like a tank. And inside, floating face down, was a girl. Not Elisa. Not quite. Her hair was longer, tangled with keys and room numbers. Her skin was translucent, like rice paper held to flame. She turned slowly, as if the water were thick as honey. Her eyes opened, white, clouded, and she smiled. Not at me. Through me. I stumbled back, and the flashlight died. Total dark. But I could still see her. She was glowing. Not bright, just there. Like a memory projected on the inside of my eyelids. She raised a hand. Not waving. Pointing. Down. Not deeper. Back. Back to the elevator. Back to the floors I'd already passed. Back to the version of me I left behind. Then the hum stopped. The silence was worse. I heard my own heartbeat, but I wasn't alone. There were others. 14, maybe. Synced. Drowning. I reached for the ladder, but it wasn't metal anymore. It was bone. Smooth. Warm. Pulsing. I climbed anyway. What else could I do? At the top, another hatch. This one locked. I pressed my ear to it and heard something on the other side. Not footsteps. Not breathing. Singing a lullaby in Mandarin, soft and cracked. The same one my mother used to hum when I had fever dreams as a child. But I never told anyone that. Not even Elisa. Not even myself. The lock clicked, not from my hand, from the other side. They're ready for you now. I gripped the handle. My fingers were no longer mine. They were longer, thinner, waterlogged. I pulled, and the door opened, not into floor 9, not into any floor at all. It opened into the hotel lobby, 1927, the same night she arrived, the same night I did. Everyone turned to look, and I saw them, all of them, all of me, waiting. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is this. The elevator behind me, never moved. I never left. I've been here the whole time. And the shaft? It wasn't between floors. It was between selves. And floor 10? Floor 10 isn't above. It's inside. And so, I stepped through the lobby that wasn't a lobby, through the year that wasn't mine, and felt the carpet squish beneath my shoes like wet lungs. The air tasted of old copper pennies and something sweeter, something spoiled. I didn't walk so much as sink, each pace heavier, as if the hotel itself was swallowing my weight. Somewhere above, below, beside, the elevator cables shivered, not groaned, no, they laughed. A low metallic titter that crawled up the back of my neck. I reached the elevator again, the same brass box that had never moved, and the doors yawned open as if they'd been holding their breath. Inside, the button panel glinted under a single dying bulb. But it wasn't the same panel, not anymore. Every plastic circle had swollen, split along the edges, and from those splits seeped something thick and dark, the color of dried blood mixed with river mud. The liquid beaded, then dripped, then poured, tracing the walls and rivulets that spelled out letters. Drip, drip, dash, drip, dot, Morse. My throat went dry. I didn't want to read it. I did anyway. Marco. Luisjanet. Names I'd seen on missing posters curling in the lobby's neglected corkboard. Each button pressed itself, obedient to some unseen finger, and every press bled more. The puddle on the floor grew until it wasn't a puddle at all. It stretched, crept, became a map. The Cecil's blueprint, every hallway and shaft outlined in rust, but one corner throbbed brighter, pulsing like a sick heart. A crawl space between floors 9 and 11 that should not exist. I knelt, boots soaking, and the liquid clung to my fingertips like syrup. When I lifted my hand, the shape of that hidden space came with it, drawn across my skin like a brand. The elevator lurched, not up, not down, but sideways. Sideways, as if the shaft itself had bent to point at that bloody X on the map. The door stayed open. They wanted me to see. I stepped back. The hallway behind me was gone. Only the elevator remained, suspended in blackness, surrounded by nothing. No cables, no walls, just the panel bleeding, spelling more names until the plastic cracked and the letters slurred into a single plea. Help me, help me, help me. I tasted iron on my tongue and realized I was biting my lip hard enough to bleed. The hotel liked that. It drank the taste. The crawl space on the map brightened, a red sun, and the elevator floor began to sink. Not mechanically, organically, the tiles softened, turned spongy, and lowered inch by inch, inviting me down into the gullet of the building. I could see the edges of the crawl space now, a narrow throat of brick and pipe just wide enough for a body. Or two. I crouched, knees in the warm rust, and pressed my palm to the glowing mark. The liquid hissed, retreated, leaving the tile beneath cold and dry, but the blueprint stayed, burned into the metal like a photograph. And then, the buttons stopped bleeding. They clicked, all at once, every floor lighting up in a frantic decay. 10, 11, 10, 11, over and over, faster, until the panels screamed, a high electric wail. The doors tried to close. I jammed my foot between them. They bit, but I didn't flinch. Through the gap, I saw the shaft walls slide away, revealing a hatch no wider than a coffin lid. Behind it, something breathed. Slow, wet, waiting. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt expected, like a dinner guest arriving precisely on time. The hatch handle, a simple iron ring, extended toward me without a hand to guide it. I took it. It was warm, pulsing. The elevator lights died. Total dark. Then, a whisper. Not from the walls, not from the shaft, but from inside my own mouth, using my own tongue. Floor 10 is inside you now. And the ring turned. The ring finished its turn with a wet click, like a tongue leaving the roof of a mouth. The elevator lurched upward one last time, though the panel stayed dark, numbers frozen on nothing. When the doors parted, they revealed a corridor that had no right to exist. I stepped out before I could talk myself out of it. The air tasted metallic, the way pennies smell when you hold them too long. Each footfall echoed twice, once from the floor, once from somewhere above my head. I counted 12 paces before I realized the elevator had already swallowed its doors behind me. No button, no seam, just blank wall where the cab had been. A low drone started, the fluorescent switching from steady glow to frantic stutter. In the flashes I saw them, shadows stretched tall and thin, dragging something that left a black smear across the tiles. They moved between blinks, closer each time the lights came back. I told myself it was only my eyes adjusting, but the drag marks kept lengthening, glistening like oil slicks. Water sloshed overhead, heavy as ocean surf trapped inside concrete. Salt stung my nostrils. I reached up, my palm came away wet, but the ceiling was bone dry. Somewhere, something laughed, the sound burbling through pipes I couldn't see. I walked. Had to. The corridor refused side doors, refused corners, refused logic. Just forward, always forward, until the strobes revealed a second set of silhouettes. These were shorter, hunched, wearing what looked like hospital gowns that dripped. They stood in a perfect line, facing the wall. When the light died, I heard fabric shuffle. When it returned, the line had rotated toward me. Closer. My heartbeat drummed in my ears, keeping time with the sloshing tide above. I tried to run, but the floor felt softer, each step sinking an inch, then two, like walking on soaked mattress. The drag marks curved now, circling behind me. I didn't dare look back. The air grew thick enough to chew. A single door appeared on the right, steel, no handle, just a small porthole crusted with salt. Through the glass, darkness pulsed. Inhale, exhale, matching my lungs. The silhouettes stopped dragging. They stood still, heads tilted as if listening. I pressed my ear to the door. Inside, water slapped against metal in steady rhythm. A heartbeat made of waves. A voice rose from it, soft, familiar. My own, but younger. You left me here. I stumbled away. The door stayed closed, yet the porthole fogged with a small, hand-shaped print that hadn't been there a moment before. The corridor narrowed, walls bowed inward, tiles buckling like ribs under pressure. I smelled seaweed and bleach mixed together. The overhead sloshing grew louder, a roar now, as if the whole ocean pressed against the concrete ceiling, looking for the weakest seam. Another door, this one wooden, swollen and cracked, materialized ahead. Unlike the steel porthole, it stood ajar by the width of a breath. Warm yellow light spilled out, gentle, almost inviting. The silhouettes hissed in unison, a sound like steam escaping old radiators. They didn't follow past the threshold. I took the invitation, fingers trembling. Inside waited a hotel room that should have been impossible. Carpet from the 1970s, avocado green, and a rotary phone on a nightstand that rang once before I touched it. The receiver lifted itself. A dial tone hummed, then shifted into the elevator bell chime, over and over. I backed away, but the door had vanished. Just wall now, floral wallpaper curling at the edges. The closet creaked open. Inside, darkness rippled like water seen from below. Something floated there, shapeless, luminous, whispering my name with the same cadence the elevator used when it spoke through my own mouth. I felt the tug behind my teeth, that same invasive presence. Floor 12 is the tide. Floor 12 is the forgetting. My knees buckled, salt water seeped from the carpet fibers, rising fast. The phone kept chiming, urgent now, as if warning me. Then, silence. The fluorescence outside snapped off. The silhouettes screamed, a chorus of rusted hinges. The room tilted, water sloshing toward the closet's hungry dark. I lunged for the phone, but the cord had turned to kelp, slick and alive, writhing away. A final bell rang, not from the phone, but from somewhere deeper, beneath the floorboards, beneath the concrete, beneath everything. The closet mouth widened. I saw the elevator panel inside, buttons glowing softly. 13, 14, and one more that had no number, only a symbol like a wave curling into itself. The water reached my waist. I had to choose. Step forward into the closet's tide, or stay and drown in a room that shouldn't exist.
My reflection stared back from the dark surface, but the face wasn't mine. It was Eliza's, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream, and the elevator bell chimed again.
Just once. A promise. A dare.
I stepped into the closet tide, and the water pulled me through like a throat swallowing. The cold shocked my lungs, but I could still breathe. Somehow, impossibly, the flood let me live. Then the elevator doors slid shut behind me, sealing the hallway that shouldn't exist into a memory. The panel inside was the same one I'd seen glowing beneath the concrete, only now the buttons pulsed like slow heartbeats. Floor 13 glowed brightest, a sickly green that stained the metal around it. I reached to press it, and the timestamp above the doors flickered. 2:19 exactly. The doors didn't move. A hum rose, low and hungry, and the display blinked once, then jumped. 2:21. 2 whole minutes erased as cleanly as chalk from a board. The elevator hadn't moved a centimeter, yet time itself had been sliced out and thrown away. I felt the gap like a missing tooth, raw and wrong. Somewhere in those stolen seconds, something had happened. The air tasted of copper pennies and chlorine. The security feed flickered to life above the buttons. No screen, just raw footage spilling across the metal like liquid film. There she was, Elisa. Not a memory, not a ghost, but recorded flesh, barefoot in the same elevator, the same green light. She pressed every button, frantic, fingers slipping on the plastic. Her reflection stood beside her, but it lagged half a heartbeat behind. I leaned closer. The reflection's elbows bent a moment too late, its head tilted after hers, like a badly dubbed movie. Then the lag grew. The mirror Elisa jerked its head the opposite way, grinning, while the real Elisa wept. 2 selves, 1 body, fighting for the steering wheel. I saw the moment the reflection won. It seized her wrist and forced her hand to the emergency stop. The elevator screamed, metal on metal, and the light snapped to a strobe that sliced every motion into broken frames. Elisa's real mouth opened in a howl I could not hear, while the reflection's lips moved calmly, counting down from 10, 9, 8, 7. Each number the reflection mouthed stole more color from the real Elisa's cheeks. By 4, her hair had turned the same drowned black as the water around our ankles. By 2, the real girl was translucent, a smear on the air. 1. The reflection stepped forward, through the mirror surface that was no longer glass but skin, and slipped inside the original like a hand into a glove. The strobe froze. Silence poured back in, thick as syrup. The timestamp reappeared, still reading 2:21, but now the colon between the numbers dripped like fresh ink. Elisa straightened, rolled her neck, and looked straight at me, through the camera, through the years, through whatever thin membrane kept us apart. "You're late," she said, voice doubled, as if 2 sets of vocal cords rubbed together. She reached toward the lens, fingers smearing the feed until it tore like wet paper. The elevator jolted upward, sudden and cruel, and the water sloshed against my shins. I expected floor 14, or maybe the unmarked buttons mystery level, but the panel only offered 13 again, brighter, angrier, the green now edged with crimson. The doors stayed sealed. I felt the car rise, yet the numbers refused to change. We were ascending through the same floor, over and over, a needle stuck in vinyl. Then the overhead bulb popped, showering me with sparks that hissed against the water. In the dark, the security feed kept playing on the inside of my eyelids. Elisa, no, the thing wearing her, leaning close to the camera until her pupils eclipsed everything. She whispered again, but this time the words came out of my own mouth, tasting of lake water and rust. "The missing minute isn't missing. You're still inside it." The elevator stopped. No ding, just the absence of motion. The doors didn't open. Instead, the button for 13 sank into the panel, leaving a hole the size of a fist. Something inside the cavity began to breathe, wet and ragged. I smelled wet concrete, old perfume, and the sharp ozone of videotape. My own reflection appeared in the water at my feet, but it was wearing Elisa's face, and it was smiling. A second hole opened beside the first, then a third, the panel dissolving like sugar in rain. Soon the entire wall was a honeycomb of dark mouths, each exhaling the same whisper. "Come count with us."
I backed away until the handrail dug into my spine. The breathing synchronized into a single, hungry heartbeat. Then the elevator lights flared white, blinding. When the spots cleared, the water was gone. My shoes were dry. The buttons were back, all except 13. That one remained a hollow. The timestamp now read 2:22, and the elevator began to descend. I watched the panel, waiting for the next floor, but the only button lit was the one that had no number, the wave curling into itself. It pulsed, once, twice, then spoke in Elisa's doubled voice. You've reached the basement. Mind the gap. The elevator did not stop. It kept sinking, slower than gravity should allow, as though the shaft itself was stretching like taffy. My ears popped once, twice, then nothing. No hum, no cables, just the soft creak of metal remembering pain. The air smelled of wet pennies and old perfume, the kind grandmothers wear to funerals. I pressed my palm to the wall. It pulsed, warm, like skin under fever. Then the ceiling panel slid aside without a sound. A rectangle of blackness opened above me, coughing dust and flakes of paint that fluttered down like dirty snow. I tasted chalk on my tongue and something else, salt, maybe tears that never dried. A rope followed, braided from hotel sheets the color of nicotine, each knot tied with the patience of someone who had nothing but time. It swayed, gentle, hypnotic, until the loop at the end brushed my cheek. Not a threat, an invitation. I should have been afraid. Instead, I felt relieved, the way you feel when the dentist finally calls your name. I reached up, fingers grazing the rope's rough weave. It was damp, as if someone had just climbed down and left their breath behind. The elevator dinged, soft as a lullaby, and the doors parted. Not to a hallway, but to the roof, 14 floors above where I'd started. The night sky pressed in, bruised purple, no stars, just one blinking red aircraft light that might have been a distant eye. Wind rolled across tar paper, carrying the smell of chlorine from the rooftop tank. I knew that tank. Everyone on the internet knew that tank. But the videos never showed the ladder welded to its side, each rung sticky with something darker than rust. I stepped out. The elevator closed behind me with a maternal hush, sealing away the only route back. My shoes crunched on broken glass that wasn't there yesterday, wasn't there ever. The rope tightened, pulled by nothing, rising toward the tank's rim. It beckoned. I followed, soles sticking to the roof like it wanted to keep me. Halfway, I heard water sloshing inside the tank, though the hatch was padlocked shut. The lock looked new, glinting, but the chain feeding through it was slack, as if the metal had grown tired and given up. I climbed. Each rung left a wet print of my sneakers, and the wind sang through the ladder like a flute made of bones. At the top, the hatch was open, not broken, just open, yawning like a mouth after a scream. Steam rose, thick and sour, carrying echoes of every shower ever taken in the hotel, every secret sob diluted by hot water. Inside, the tank was empty, no water, only darkness, and in that darkness, something breathing in sync with my own lungs. I leaned closer. The rope dangled down the center, stopping 3 feet above the curved floor. Tied to its end was a small brass key, the kind that once fit every room in the Cecil, before they switched to cards. The key spun slowly, catching what little light there was, flashing Morse code only the drowned could read. I reached for it. My fingers brushed cold metal, and the tank shivered. The curved walls flexed outward, once, like a heartbeat. A single droplet fell from nowhere, landed on the key, slid along the rope, and traced a wet line across my wrist. It burned. I smelled ozone, then lilacs, then nothing. From the bottom of the tank came a whisper, not Elisa's, mine. You left the elevator, silly girl. The rope jerked upward, yanked by invisible hands, and the brass key rose out of reach. The hatch slammed shut above me, sealing out the sky, and the tank began to fill, not with water, but with sound. Every shower I'd ever taken, every bath, every late-night glass of water, all rushing in at once, louder than traffic, louder than memory. I pressed my back to the curved wall, feeling it breathe. The key was gone, but something else descended now, slower, deliberate. A second rope, this one white, hospital white, tied in the same patient knots. At its end hung a plastic laundry tag. Written on it, in the ink that never quite dries, was a room number. My room number. The breathing quickened, matching mine, faster, faster, until I couldn't tell whose heart was whose. The tag spun, flashed, and I read the second line beneath the number. It said, in letters that dripped before I could finish them, "Check out, is it dawn?" And then the bottom of the tank opened like an iris, blacker than any night, and something began to climb up toward me, hand over hand, using both ropes as guide. I couldn't see it yet, but I felt its smile. And worst of all, it felt familiar. The iris widened, and I fell through. But the fall felt sideways, like gravity had decided to take a coffee break, and left me dangling between directions. The elevator walls peeled away with a wet, ripping sound, strips of metal curling back like burnt paper. I wasn't in an elevator anymore. I was inside the tank itself, every surface slick with obsidian water that reflected nothing but my own terror back at me, multiplied into infinity. The water whispered. No, that's too gentle. It screamed, but softly, like it had been screaming so long it forgot how to stop. Each ripple carried voices layered on top of each other, some high like children, some low like men dragged down by secrets. 1927, 1943, 1989, all jumbled together until the years themselves became meaningless. I tasted copper and old pennies and realized I was breathing water that wasn't water, breathing history that had turned sour. Then the tank spoke, not around me, but through me, using the cavity behind my teeth as a megaphone. It used her voice, Elisa's voice, but stretched like taffy pulled too thin. I was never alone, it said, and each word echoed with 100 other voices agreeing, confirming, testifying. The laugh that followed wasn't hers, wasn't mine, belonged to everyone who ever thought jumping into dark water would solve anything. The black surfaces began to ripple outward from where I floated, and each ripple showed me a different death, a woman in pearls clutching her throat as something grew inside her, a man with camera eyes watching himself drown over and over, children with numbers instead of names, learning how to hold their breath forever. The tank had been collecting us like stamps, licking our memories and sticking us to its walls where we'd stay fresh and crisp and screaming. I tried to swim, but the water thickened, became something between liquid and memory. My arms moved through it like I was trying to breaststroke through honey mixed with regret. The voices grew louder, more insistent, telling me their names, their room numbers, their last thoughts before the tank swallowed them whole. They weren't asking for help anymore. They were asking for company. That's when I saw the ladder. Same rusted metal rungs from the roof, but now they descended from somewhere above, disappearing into the black above my head. And climbing down it, hand over hand, was me. Not metaphorically me, not spiritually me, but literally me, wearing the same clothes, same expression of dawning horror. The other me leaked up, and our eyes met across impossible distance, and I realized the tank wasn't just showing me the past, it was showing me the loop. The other me reached the water's surface and kept descending, passing through me like I was smoke, and I felt every memory she carried, every floor we'd walked together, every hallway that shouldn't exist, every minute that went missing. She was me from 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, forever ago, still falling, still discovering, still thinking this was the first time. The tank's voice changed, became softer, almost maternal. You checked in, it whispered. But checkout isn't optional. The water began to rise, not up the walls, but up my nose, my throat, filling me with the taste of every guest who ever thought they could leave. I understood then why the elevator never worked right, why the floors kept shifting, why the roof hatch opened itself. The Cecil wasn't a hotel. It was a throat, and we were all just something it was still chewing. And as the water reached my eyes, as I felt myself becoming another ripple in the black mirror, I heard the final voice. Not Elisa's, not the others, but mine. My own voice speaking from somewhere above, somewhere I hadn't reached yet. It said the words I'd been dreading since I first pressed the elevator button, the words that explained everything and nothing. She's still in the lobby, checking in. She always has been. The lobby was humming again, but backwards. The chandelier above me unshattered, glass shards leaping off the marble like obedient dancers returning to their places. I heard the bellhop cough politely, except the cough was inhaling, a reverse gasp that pulled words out of thin air and stuffed them back into his mouth. The scent of old perfume rewound itself into the bottle, cork sealing tight, never to be worn again. I tried to step forward and stepped backward instead. My heel found the exact print it had left a heartbeat earlier, as though the carpet were remembering me in reverse. The elevator doors yawned open, but this time they begged me not to enter. Please just look away, the metal sighed, its voice like rust grinding on rust. I ignored it, of course I did, and stepped inside. The panel of buttons lit up from 14 down to 1, then past 1 into something that should have been 0, but felt like less than nothing. The car didn't descend, it unascended. Every floor we passed was a wound closing. On 13, a woman's scream funneled back into her throat. On 12, a bloodstain lifted from the wallpaper, like crimson steam sucked through a straw. 11 showed me a maid folding a sheet that had just been pulled over a corpse. The body beneath sat up, eyes wide, mouth stitching itself shut. I wanted to close my eyes, but eyelids don't work in rewind. They peel open when you will them shut. At floor 7, the doors opened onto the pool, but the water was climbing the walls, returning to the pipes. A single drop leapt from the tile and flew upward, rejoining the mass like a lost child. I heard the splash before the dive, a sound that pulled a body out of the deep and laid it gently on the coping. The skin was pale, bloated, yet somehow the faceless head turned toward me and smiled with no mouth. I laughed because horror sometimes sounds like laughter played backward. Floor 4 smelled of gun oil and regret. A revolver spun in reverse, bullets flying from plaster into the cylinder, the hammer uncocking with a polite click. The man holding it, just a shadow in a fedora, stepped away from the wall, where his silhouette had been outlined in fresh lead. He tipped his hat to me, a gesture of thanks for watching him undie. I nodded, because manners are the last thing that leave us, even when time is running backward. Then the elevator stopped between floors, between numbers, between breaths. The lights dimmed to a bruised violet. The speaker crackled, and out came a voice that was mine and not mine. It recited the check-in card I'd never filled out. Name, date, reason for stay. The last line was the kicker. Reason for stay. To witness. The doors slid open onto a darkness so complete, it felt like the inside of a closed eye. I stepped out, or was pulled, and found myself in the basement. But the basement wasn't a basement yet. Concrete flowed upward into wooden forms, nails leaping from puddles into hammers that then unswung themselves. Somewhere beneath the drying slab, coffins lifted, lids unsealing, bodies rising like actors taking their places for the second act. A child's shoe unstuck from a shallow grave and hopped back onto a foot I could not see. Blood ran upward into reopened veins, wounds sealing with wet kisses. I wanted to cheer for their resurrection, but the air tasted of formaldehyde and apologies. A corridor stretched ahead, lined with doors I had never noticed, each one opening as I approached. Behind the first, a woman counted money that flew from her purse back into a stranger's hand. Behind the second, a man rehearsed a suicide note until the pen sucked the ink back inside. Behind the third, well, I never reached the third, because the floor beneath me began to tilt like a seesaw. The hallway rolled, the doors slammed shut, and the elevator behind me screamed. Not dinged, screamed, metal on metal, brakes shrieking in reverse. I turned to run, but my legs were already running backward, carrying me toward the final door at the corridor's end. It was red, the color of fresh rust, and it was opening even though no hand touched the knob. From inside came the sound of water, not dripping, not flowing, but inhaling. Ugh. A great thirsty gulp that pulled the entire Cecil toward its center. The door swung wide. Inside, the tank waited, lid already lifted, water already brimming. Something floated just beneath the surface, face obscured by hair that swirled like black ink. I knew whose hair it was before I saw the hand reach up, not to escape, but to wave hello. My throat locked. The witness had been rewound far enough. The story was ready to begin again. And that's when the lid slammed down, not on her, but on me, sealing the tank with a sound like the lobby clock striking 13 in reverse. The lid slammed down, not on her, but on me, sealing the tank with a sound like the lobby clock striking 13 in reverse. For one heartbeat, the world was only darkness and the taste of copper water. Then, the elevator dinged, gentle as a nurse calling the next patient. Clears throat. I was no longer in the tank, no longer even in my own skin. I stood inside the elevator, the one we'd watched for hours, its brass rails fogged by something colder than breath. The doors, which had refused to shut for so long, now slid together as if they'd been waiting only for me. I reached to jam my hand between them, reflex, but my fingers passed through the crack like smoke. No flesh left to stop anything. The doors sealed, and the cab began its descent. Not up to the roof, not down to the lobby, but somewhere sideways. Some direction elevators aren't built to travel. The panel above the buttons showed no floor numbers, only a rolling date. February 19th, 2021, 22, 23. It counted faster, years flicking by like cards in a shuffled deck, until the display settled on February 19th, 3021. 1,000 years of silence pressed against my ears. Then came the drip. One droplet struck the lens of whatever eye was still watching. Mine? The camera's? Yours? And clung there, trembling. It spelled no word I recognized, yet I heard it plain as a bell. Remember. The water trembled, fattened, and slid away, leaving only the ghost of itself, a breath print on glass. The elevator lights dimmed to embers. The screen, because by now I understood I was inside the screen, faded to perfect black, but the timestamp refused to die. It hovered, white on white, counting heartbeats none of us had anymore. I waited for credits, for silence, for the mercy of an end. Instead, a soft click, like a tape reaching its transparent tail, and the black dissolved back into the hallway we'd started in. The elevator doors stood open, beckoning. The same scuffed carpet, the same flickering sconce, the same faint scent of chlorine and old ambition. I felt the loop tighten around my ribs like a corset laced by someone who never learned mercy. I stepped out, or the point of view did, because by now the difference was academic, and walked the corridor again. Each footfall sounded wetter than before. The walls wept quietly, wallpaper peeling in damp curls that looked like fingers letting go. I passed the vending alcove. The machine hummed a lullaby in a language drowned long ago. A single can of water, yes, water, not soda, sat in the drop slot, beaded and sweating. I bent to read the label, though I had no mouth to drink. It said, in letters that squirmed like tadpoles, "Drink and forget." I did neither. Somewhere above, the tank lid slammed again, echoing through 14 floors of memory. The sound rolled down the stairwell like a marble in a skull. I knew what waited at the bottom. The witness, rewound to the beginning, ready to wave hello. I knew what waited at the top, the hatch yawning open to swallow every star Los Angeles ever promised. And between them, the elevator kept traveling its impossible line, a pendulum that measured nothing but return. I reached the elevator once more. The doors welcomed me with all the warmth of a mouth that has forgotten how to close. I stepped inside, not because I wanted to, but because that is what the story demands. The button panel offered only one choice now, a small circle where the emergency stop used to be, labeled play. I pressed it with the last of my will. The doors slid shut, the timestamp reset to 0, and the drip began again. Remember, 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 until memory itself became the trap. So here we are, you and I, sealed inside this forever moving box. You think you're watching from the outside, but listen, that's your own breath fogging the lens. The elevator never stops, the water never dries, the story never ends. It only pauses, politely, until you press play again. And when you do, I'll be here, waving hello from beneath the surface, counting the years until the next February 19th rolls around. Remember, remember. The final echo isn't mine, it's yours.